The galaxy wasn't kind. It was vast, indifferent, and littered with the cold, silent bones of dead civilizations. Stars burned with the fury of forgotten gods, casting long shadows across nebulae that swirled like cosmic grave shrouds. In this grand, uncaring theater, humanity had stumbled onto the stage late, clumsy and loud. We called our home Saul. Others had names for us that tasted like ash and static. They called us Ketharin, Deathworlders, not because we sought death but because we thrived in its shadow. Our planet, Earth, was a crucible of violence and beauty, predators and prey locked in an eternal, brutal dance. We'd clawed our way out of that mire, built cities that scraped the sky, then turned our eyes outward. We found the stars weren't empty, they were occupied. The concordance of harmonious spheres, a sprawling ancient alliance of species bound by rigid protocols, intricate hierarchies, and a profound, almost religious aversion to chaos, had watched our emergence with cold, analytical eyes. To them, humanity was an anomaly, a biological paradox, a species that bred in the radioactive ruins of its own near extinction, that laughed while bleeding, that built starships while arguing over the color of the paint. We were unpredictable, unstable, dangerous. And then the Reapers came. No one knew their origin. They simply were. Vast, obsidian black vessels shaped like fractured obsidian shards, moving with impossible silence through the void. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They descended upon worlds aligned with the concordance. Worlds of crystalline spires and serene bioluminescent forests, and unmade them. Not with bombs, not with energy beams, but with something else. A silent wave that dissolved matter into shimmering dust, erased data streams into static, silenced minds into vacant echoes. Entire civilizations blinked out of existence, leaving only expanding clouds of inert particulate and the chilling silence of absolute negation. The concordance called it the Scouring. They called the perpetrators the nullifiers. Humanity, with our blunt survivalist pragmatism, called them Reapers. It felt right, grim, final. The concordance High Council, seated in their orbital citadel of polished moonstone and humming grav plates, debated. Panic, a luxury they rarely afforded, began to seep into their meticulously ordered ranks. Their fleets, vast and gleaming, were being systematically dismantled. Their defensive grids, woven from centuries of layered technology, shattered like glass before the Reaper onslaught. Their logic engines, capable of predicting stellar drift millennia in advance, found only static when attempting to model the Reaper's tactics. It was chaos incarnate, and chaos was anathema. Desperation, that unwelcome guest, finally knocked on the door of the concordance's pride. Reluctantly, almost shamefully, they turned their gaze towards the chaotic anomaly they'd long sought to contain. Sol System, towards the Keth. On the scarred surface of Luna, within the reinforced titanium and concrete warren known as Bastion Command, Admiral Anya Rustova watched the latest holomap flicker and die. Again, the projection of the Cygnus arm, once a tapestry of stable concordance holdings, now resembled a cancerous growth, dark patches spreading relentlessly. Each dark patch was a world silenced. A billion souls erased. Rostova wasn't tall, but she carried the weight of Earth's fragile star-spanning presence like a second skeleton. Her face, etched with lines that spoke of too many sleepless nights and too many funerals, was set in its usual grim mask. But her eyes held the cold fire of a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and its own self-destructive impulses. They held the fire of the Deathworlder. Status on the Cygnus perimeter? Her voice was low, gravel scraping stone, but it cut through the tense hum of the command center. Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, young, sharp, and still carrying the faint scent of ozone from the simulators, flinched slightly before straightening. Gone, Admiral. Perimeter Alpha 7. Just gone. Last transmission was a garbled burst of static, then nothing. Concordance fleet elements in the sector report total sensor blackout. No debris signature. No energy residue. Just vacuum. Rostova's knuckles whitened on the edge of the console. Like the others. It wasn't a question. It was the drumbeat of extinction. And the Concordance delegation. They're insistent. Admiral Carter said, choosing his words carefully. Ambassador V. Relac demands an audience. Again, he's agitated. Agitated? Rostova barked a humorless laugh. Good. Let him choke on it. Tell him I'll see him when I've finished counting the dead. She turned away, her gaze fixed on the main viewport. Earth hung in the blackness, a swirl of blue and white, impossibly fragile. Beautiful, worth dying for, worth killing for. Patch me through to the Odyssey. The Odyssey wasn't a warship. Not officially. It was a deep-range survey vessel, retrofitted with enough jury-rigged weaponry and hardened comms to make it a thorn in the side of anyone who underestimated it. Its captain, Elias Vance, was Rostova's wildcard. A man who'd walked away from a cushy corporate research post after the Martian dust riots, choosing the razor's edge of the frontier over sterile safety. He understood the Deathworlder ethos better than most politicians back on Earth. Vance, Rostova's voice softened, just a fraction over the secure channel. You're skirting the edge of the last known Reaper incursion zone. Report. The voice that crackled back was calm, almost lazy. But Rostova heard the underlying tension, the coiled spring. Scanners are twitchy. Anya, picking up echoes. Residual chronoton decay maybe. Like the air after lightning, but colder. Wronger. And the stars. They look dimmer out here, like something's sucking the light out of them. A pause. Found something else. Drifting. Not debris. A pod. Concordance design. Life signs. Faint. One occupant. Rostova's breath hitched. A survivor? From a scoured world? Retrieve it. Priority Alpha. Get it back to Luna. Now. Already on it, Vance replied. But Anya, this feels like bait, or a warning. That pod, it's too clean. Too intact. Then be careful, Elias, Rostova said, the command laced with unspoken fear. Bring it home, and bring yourself home. On the bridge of the Concordance dreadnought Harmony's Resolve, High Strategist Kalen Volek observed the human admiral's transmission with cold disdain. His multifaceted eyes, set in a face of smooth gray chatin, reflected the dying starlight from the viewport. His long, segmented fingers tapped a silent rhythm on the arm of his command throne, a rhythm of profound irritation. These Catharn, their crude emotions, their illogical defiance, their sheer noise, they broadcast their fear, their anger, their stubborn hope across the comms like primitive drumbeats. It was inefficient, distasteful, and yet they were the only ones whose sensor logs, however primitive, showed anomalies near Reaper incursions. Fleeting energy spikes the Concordance's own sophisticated arrays dismissed as sensor ghosts. Glitches. The Catharn called them echoes. Superstitious nonsense. But the Scouring left no ghosts. Only silence, and the Concordance was running out of time. The High Council's directive was clear: leverage the Catharn anomaly. Extract whatever crude data they possessed. If they proved useful, perhaps their chaotic existence could be tolerated. If not, well, the Reapers might solve the Catharn problem for them. A distasteful thought, but efficiency demanded considering all variables. Vrsaplak's aide, a younger diplomat named Zintra, approached, his carapace plates shimmering with nervous energy. Strategist! The human vessel Odyssey has retrieved the escape pod from Cygnus 7th. They are returning to Luna. Brad, mandibles clicked softly. Cygnus 7th, the crystalline world, scoured 3 solar cycles ago. Impossible for a pod to survive. His thoughts raced. Unless the Reapers allowed it. Why? The illogical possibility sent a rare chill through his chitinous frame. Monitor the pod's biosigns discreetly, and prepare the diplomatic shuttle. I will observe the Catharn interrogation personally. Their methods are brutish, but perhaps their desperation yields results our logic cannot. The escape pod hissed open in Luna's sterile medbay gamma. Inside, curled in a fetal position, was a being unlike any human or Concordance member. It was small, frail, its skin a translucent gray, stretched taut over delicate bones. Its large, lidless eyes, the color of stagnant water, blinked slowly, taking in the harsh lights. The humans in bulky environment suits. It made no sound, It simply existed, a ghost given form. Dr. Aris Thorne, the lead xenobiologist, adjusted her visor, her voice tight with awe and dread. Physiology is unknown, not concordance, not in any database. Minimal vital signs. Neural activity, chaotic, like a storm trapped in glass. She gently scanned the being. It's clutching something, embedded in its chest cavity. With painstaking care, using micro-tools, Thorne extracted the object. It was a shard of obsidian, no larger than a human thumb, but it seemed to drink the light around it. Cold radiated from it, a physical chill that made the air crackle. As Thorne held it in a containment field, the shard pulsed once, a deep, subsonic thrum that vibrated in the bones of everyone in the room. The alien's eyes snapped open, wide with terror, and it let out a single high-pitched shriek that cut off abruptly as its body went utterly still, flatlined. Silence descended, heavier than before. The shard lay in the containment field, inert, yet radiating profound wrongness. Admiral Lostovy entered, flanked by Vance and Carter. Grulak and Zentra followed, their presence an unwelcome pressure. Grulak's and Zentra followed, their presence an unwelcome pressure. Grulak's multifaceted eyes fixed on the shard. That is Reaper residue. Forbidden artifact. It must be contained. Studied by Concordance Science Directive. It was in a survivor, Rostova stated flatly, her eyes never leaving the shard. A survivor from a scoured world. What does it mean, Verlek? Why leave this thing? The Reapers operate beyond meaning, Catharn, Relek hissed, his voice like dry leaves scraping stone. They are entropy given form. This is likely a lure, or a weapon. Hand it over, your primitive facilities cannot contain its influence. Like your fleets couldn't contain the Reapers themselves. Vance shot back, his usual calm replaced by sharp anger. This came from our sector, found by our ship. It's ours. Yours? Brock's mandibles flared. You grasp at straws while the galaxy dies. This artifact is a key to understanding the Scouring. Concordance protocols demand. Protocols got your world scoured. Rostova's voice cut through the argument like a vibroblade. The room fell silent. She stepped closer to the containment field, staring into the light-devouring depths of the shard. We've been studying your protocols, strategist. Your perfect defenses, your flawless logic, and every single one of them failed. Spectacularly. She turned to Thorne. Doctor, run every scan you have, non-invasive. Everything. I want to know what this thing is, not what your rulebook says it should be. Thorne nodded, her hands trembling slightly, as she activated the array. Energy beams, quantum resonance scanners, chronodon probes, all lanced towards the shard. For a moment nothing happened. Then the shard reacted, not with an explosion but with a wave of pure, silent negation. The scanners didn't break, they simply ceased to function. Their readouts dissolved into static snow. The lights in Med Bay Gamma flickered violently, then died, plunging the room into emergency red gloom. Alarms blared, not fire or breach alarms, but the deep, mournful wail of system-wide cascade failure. From the main viewport, visible even through the red emergency lighting, the stars outside seemed to wink out. Not one by one, but in a spreading wave of absolute lightless void. Rushing towards Luna, towards Vrelek let out a sound like shattering ice. The scouring wave. It's here. They followed the artifact. They're coming for Sol. Rostova's blood ran cold. She looked at the inert shard, then at the encroaching wall of nothingness on the viewport. The Reapers weren't just coming. They were already here. And they'd used the Concordance's own desperate hope, the survivor, the artifact, as a homing beacon. Her mind raced, discarding tactics, strategies, the weight of command. What do you do when the ultimate weapon isn't a bomb but silence? When the enemy doesn't fight but unmakes? In that moment of pure existential terror, a memory surfaced, not of battle tactics, but of her first week as a junior technician on the old Jovian mining rigs. A catastrophic coolant leak in Reactor 3. Panic, chaos, and the grizzled chief engineer, covered in grease, slamming his fist on the comms panel and yelling, "Screw the manual, just open a damn ticket with central support. Tell him the fancy box is broken," and spitting fire. A ticket. A request. A plea for help to the system itself. The shard wasn't a weapon. It was a component. A broken part. And the Reapers. They weren't invaders. They were the universe's maintenance crew, sent to fix a glitch. A glitch named humanity. Rostova's voice, when it came, was terrifyingly calm, cutting through the blaring alarms and Vernilak's panicked clicks. "Carter, get me the deepest, most secure comms channel we have. Priority Omega. Bypass all Concordance protocols. Road it to the source." Carter stared, bewildered. "The source, Admiral? The source of what?" "The Reapers," Rostova said, her eyes fixed on the advancing wave of nothingness, now swallowing the orbiting defense platforms like dust motes. "Open a tech support ticket. Tell them the Deathworlders are experiencing a critical system error. Unauthorized reality deletion event in progress. Request immediate intervention. Reference code, Sol." Silence. Utter disbelieving silence, broken only by the dying wail of the alarms and the hungry silence of the approaching void. Bullock looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Vance just nodded slowly, a grim understanding dawning in his eyes. Thorne's scanner readouts were pure static. Carter, pale but resolute, fingers flying over his console, initiated the sequence. A single stark message, encoded in every known data protocol and several humanity had headed out of sheer desperation, pulsed out from Luna, aimed not at any star, any fleet, but into the terrifying silent heart of the oncoming scouring wave. Lava system alert, critical failure. Location Sol system, Sector 7G. Error unauthorized reality deletion event. User Homo sapiens. Designation Deathworlders. Status operational despite glitch. Request immediate technical support. Rift Sol Prime, Omega. The message vanished into the void. The scouring wave, a wall of absolute non-existence, filled the viewport. Luna's lights died completely. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the humans and the terrified clicks of the Concordance diplomats. The shard in its containment field pulsed once, a final cold heartbeat. Then, nothing. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of the absence of sound, the absence of light, absence of everything that had been. Luna hung in the void, a dark, dead rock, earth, a distant, silent marble. The scouring wave had passed over them and left them intact, unscathed, utterly, terrifyingly alone. In the pitch-black command center of Bastion, emergency lights flickered back on, weak and yellow. Consoles sputtered to life, displaying cascading error messages and system reboots. The air tasted stale, metallic. Admiral Rostova stood frozen, her hand still hovering over the comms console where Carter had sent the impossible message. Had it worked? Or had the Reapers simply paused? Was this the calm before the final absolute deletion? Vernilak was the first to move, his chitinous limbs trembling with a mixture of relief and profound confusion. It stopped. Why? The scouring wave does not stop. It consumes. His multifaceted eyes scanned the restored holomop. Sol system was intact. The wave had dissipated beyond the orbit of Mars, leaving a trail of nothingness where the outer defense platforms had been. But Earth, Luna, the inner colonies, because we filed a ticket, Vance said quietly, stepping out of the shadows near the viewport. He looked exhausted, but his eyes held a fierce, almost manic glint. We told the system there was a bug, and maybe, just maybe, the system listens. Absurd, Redlac spat, but the conviction in his voice was hollow. He had witnessed the impossible. The Catharn had done something that defied all Concordance understanding of the Reapers, of the universe itself. His rigid worldview built on logic and hierarchy felt like cracked porcelain. This changes nothing. The Reapers will return. They always return. And your ticket is meaningless noise. Meaningless? Rostova turned, her face grim in the dim light. It bought us time, strategist. Time you and your perfect concordance couldn't buy with your fleets or your protocols. Time we intend to use. She looked at Carter. Any response? Anything at all? Carter shook his head, his face pale. Nothing, Admiral. Just static. Deep, cosmic static. Like the lines open, but no one's home. He swallowed hard. Or maybe they're just processing. The next 72 hours were a blur of frantic activity and gnawing dread. Bastion Command became a hive of controlled chaos. Engineers worked around the clock, not just repairing systems damaged by the scouring wave's proximity, but attempting to analyze the nature of the negation. Dr. Thorne, working with the now inert Obsidian shard which stubbornly refused to yield any further data, theorized it was a reality anchor, a focal point for the scouring effect. Its presence and the proximity of the wave had caused localized system failures, but the wave itself had been diverted, halted. The why remained a terrifying mystery. Relac, under orders from the High Council that were laced with both desperation and suspicion, was forced into an uneasy alliance. Concordance science teams, their usual arrogance tempered by fear, shared fragmented data on Reaper energy signatures and temporal distortions. Human engineers, used to patching things together with duct tape and ingenuity, listened, adapted, and proposed solutions that made the Concordance scientists blanch. You want to overload the quantum foam stabilizers? That could cause a localized vacuum collapse. Yeah, Vance would reply, wiping grease from his brow after a shift on the Odyssey's jury-rigged shield emitters. But if it creates a feedback loop that disrupts their negation field for half a second, it's worth a shot. We don't have time for perfect. The tension was a live wire. Trust was non-existent. Every shared piece of data was scrutinized for hidden traps. Every human suggestion was met with concordant skepticism. Yet the shared specter of the Reapers, the memory of that advancing wall of nothingness, forced a fragile cooperation. Rostova and Verlek held daily, terse strategy sessions. She saw the cracks in his certainty. He saw the terrifying, unyielding resolve in her eyes. They were two predators circling, forced to share a shrinking cage. Deep within the labyrinthine data core of the Concordance High Council Citadel, far from the prying eyes of humans and even most Concordance citizens, a different kind of tension brewed. Elder Archivist Lyra Voss watched the real-time feeds from Luna with ancient, weary eyes. Her species, the Silthari, were the keepers of the Concordance's oldest secrets, the librarians of galactic history. They rarely involved themselves in politics or war, but the Reapers were different. Lyra had spent centuries studying fragmented myths, half-erased data crystals from pre-Concordance eras, whispers of the Great Pruning, tales of the Silent Gardeners, stories dismissed as primitive superstition by the logical Concordance. But the Scouring, it matched the descriptions too perfectly. The Reapers weren't invaders, they were custodians, enforcers of a cosmic order so vast, so ancient, that the Concordance's entire existence was less than a flicker in its eye. In humanity, the Cathern, they were the anomaly, the weed in the perfectly manicured garden. Their chaotic, violent, creative existence violated the fundamental principle the Reapers upheld: stability, predictability, the smooth, unchanging flow of entropy towards heat death. Deathworlders, with their constant adaptation, their refusal to accept limits, their messy, unpredictable lives, they were a glitch in the grand design, a dangerous instability. Lyra's long, slender fingers traced the glowing symbols on her console. She accessed archives sealed for millennia, records of previous prunings, civilizations erased not for aggression, but for excess, for complexity that threatened the cosmic equilibrium. The Concordance, with its rigid order, was tolerated. Barely. But humanity was a supernova of chaotic potential, a threat to the very fabric of the ordered void the Reapers maintained. A cold dread, deeper than any she'd ever known, settled in her core. The humans' tech support ticket. It might have bought them a reprieve, but it had also flagged them, made them visible to the system in a way they never had been before. The Reapers wouldn't just delete them now, they would investigate, and the investigation might lead to a far more thorough correction. She needed to warn someone. But who? The High Council? They would dismiss her as a senile archivist clinging to myths. The humans? They were already seen as dangerous anomalies. Telling them the truth might make them act even more erratically, hastening their doom. Lyra felt the weight of impossible knowledge, a secret that could shatter the Concordance and doom humanity all at once. She made a decision, a dangerous one. She encrypted a data packet containing her findings, the myths, the historical parallels, the terrifying hypothesis, and routed it through a dozen anonymizing relays. Its destination, Luna, specifically to the human xenobiologist, Dr. Aris Thorne, a scientist, someone who might understand the language of evidence, not just dogma. On Luna, the fragile truce shattered. It started with a minor system fluctuation in the shared Concordance human comms array, a data packet, heavily encrypted, routed to Dr. Thorne. Standard procedure dictated it be scanned by Concordance security before delivery. Rowlek, ever suspicious, ordered a deep-level decryption. What they found wasn't military secrets or sabotage plans. It was history, terrible, ancient history. The myth of the silent gardeners, the principle of cosmic equilibrium, the designation Catharn, designation glitch, threat level, critical. Vrolak's blood ran cold, not with fear for humanity, but with the chilling confirmation of his deepest, most unspoken dread. The Catharn weren't just chaotic, they were existentially dangerous. A flaw in the universe's code. The Reapers weren't just cleaning up, they were performing essential maintenance. And the Concordance's rigid order was part of that maintenance. They were competist, tolerated. But humanity was the error that needed purging. The revelation warped his perspective. The uneasy alliance wasn't cooperation, it was contamination. Every human engineer working on Concordance systems, every shared data stream, was a potential vector for the Catharn glitch to spread. His sacred duty to the Concordance and the cosmic order demanded containment. Elimination. He convened an emergency session with Rostova, his usual disdain replaced by a cold, fanatical certainty. Admiral Rostova, the data is irrefutable. Your species represents an unacceptable deviation from cosmic stability. The Reapers act not out of malice, but necessity, to preserve the equilibrium upon which all existence depends. Rostova stared at him, disbelief, warring with fury. You're saying we deserve to be erased? Because we're messy? Because we fight to live? Because your very existence threatens the continued existence of everything else. Varrock's voice rose, mandibles clicking rapidly. Your chaotic energy, your unpredictable evolution, your refusal to accept natural limits, it creates ripples in the quantum foam, instabilities in the fabric of space-time. The Reapers correct these errors. The Concordance understands this necessity. We have always understood. The betrayal was a physical blow. The Concordance hadn't just failed to stop the Reapers, they agreed with them. They saw humanity as a disease. Rostova's hand went to her sidearm. Get off my station, Vrelak. Now, before I have you spaced. Rax didn't flinch. You cannot hide from the truth, Catharn. The Reapers will return. And when they do, the Concordance will not stand in their way. We will ensure your deletion is efficient. He turned and strode out, his chitinous form radiating cold finality. Chaos erupted. Concordance personnel were ordered to withdraw to their ships. Human security forces moved to detain them, leading to tense standoffs in the corridors of Bastion. Vance, aboard the Odyssey, received frantic orders to intercept the Concordance dreadnought Harmony's resolve before it could jump to safety and report humanity's true nature to the High Council. They'll paint us as the ultimate threat, Anya, he yelled over the comm. They'll turn every neutral system against us. Stop them, Elias, Rostova ordered, her voice like ice. By any means necessary. We cannot let that data get out. The fragile hope bought by the tech support ticket was crumbling into ash. They were alone. Truly alone. And the universe, it seemed, wanted them gone. The Odyssey intercepted the Harmony's resolve in the shadow of Jupiter's great red spot. Vance didn't fire. He couldn't. Destroying a Concordance flagship would be an act of war that would unite the entire alliance against Earth. Instead, he did something far more audacious. He hailed Vorlek. "Strategist, stand down. You're making a catastrophic mistake." Black's image appeared on the view screen, cold and resolute. "The mistake was tolerating your kind, Catharn. The data is clear. Your deletion is inevitable. We merely facilitate the process. It's not deletion." "Rodlock," Vance shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "It's murder. Blind, stupid murder of a species that's just trying to live. Look at your own history. Look at the Silthari archives. The Reapers don't just delete threats. They delete complexity. They delete life that dares to be different. Is that the equilibrium you worship? A dead, silent universe?" For a fraction of a second, doubt flickered in Vidrilak's multifaceted eyes. The Silthari archives, Lyra Voss. He'd dismissed her as irrelevant. But Vance's words, they resonated with a terrifying truth he'd buried deep. The Concordance Order was sterile. Life within it was predictable, safe. But was it alive? He thought of the vibrant, chaotic, terrifyingly alive humans on Luna. Their art, their music, their arguments, their laughter in the face of despair. It was messy, yes, but it burned with a light his own people had long extinguished. Before he could respond, the sensors screamed. Not Concordance signatures. Not human. Reaper signatures. Dozens of them. Emerging from subspace, not far from Jupiter's orbit. Moving with silent, terrifying purpose. Not towards the Odyssey or the Harmony's resolve. Towards Sol. Vilak's blood turned to ice. "They're early!" The ticket it didn't buy time, it accelerated the response. He looked at Vance, true panic in his eyes for the first time. "They're coming for Earth. Now." Vance didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist on the comms. "All ships, fall back to Earth. Maximum speed. Rostova, they're coming. All of them." As the Odyssey and the stunned Harmony's resolve turned towards the inner system, Vance saw something that stopped his heart. The lead Reaper vessel. It wasn't just moving. It was changing. Its obsidian surface rippled, flowing like liquid darkness, forming symbol, complex geometric patterns that pulsed with cold light. And at their center, glowing with terrible clarity, was a sequence of characters. TSOLPRIME. The Reapers had received the ticket, and they were responding. Not with deletion, with inspection. The devastating revelation hit Vance like a physical blow. The Reapers weren't mindless destroyers. They were intelligent, and they were coming to see the glitch for themselves. The sky over Earth wasn't sky anymore. It was a tapestry of nightmare. Dozens of Reaper vessels, each the size of a small moon, hung in geosynchronous orbit, their obsidian forms drinking the sunlight, casting long, cold shadows over the continents below. They didn't attack. They simply observed, silent, imposing. The geometric symbols, Sol Sol Prime, still pulsed on the lead vessel, a chilling acknowledgement. On the surface, panic was a living thing. Cities were dark, evacuated to underground bunkers. The few aircraft that dared fly were swatted from the sky by silent energy pulses that dissolved them into shimmering dust. Not violently, but with the quiet efficiency of a gardener plucking a dead leaf. The Reapers weren't waging war. They were conducting an audit. In Bastion Command, the atmosphere was thick with dread and the acrid smell of ozone from overloaded systems. Rostova stood before the main viewport, watching the silent armada. Relak stood beside her, his usual arrogance replaced by a hollow, haunted look. The Concordance fleet, what remained of it after the Scouring, hung back at the edge of the system, a silent, complicit audience. They wouldn't help. They wouldn't interfere. They were waiting to see if the gardeners would prune the weed or uproot the entire garden. "The symbols, they're changing," Carter whispered, his voice trembling as he monitored the alien comms. "New data stream. It's a diagnostic request. They're scanning everything. Atmosphere, biosphere, neural activity. They're running a full system check on Sol Prime, Looking for the glitch, Vance said, entering the command center, his face grim. He'd brought the Odyssey in close, a defiant tiny speck against the Reaper monoliths. They want to see what makes us tick, what makes us wrong. Dr. Thorne rushed in, clutching a data slate. Admiral, the packet. The one from the Silthari archivist. It's not just history, it's a hypothesis. A theory about the Reaper's purpose. Her eyes were wide with a terrifying mix of fear and revelation. They're not just deleting threats, they're maintaining cosmic homeostasis, preventing runaway complexity that could trigger a vacuum decay event or destabilize the fundamental constants. They see chaotic, rapidly evolving life like ours as a potential catalyst for universal collapse. Rostova felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. Not malice, not hatred, just cold, cosmic necessity. Like stepping on an ant to save a forest. So we're the ant, she said, her voice No, Thorne insisted, her voice gaining strength. The archivist believes, she hopes, that the Reapers aren't infallible, that their protocols have gaps, blind spots. They understand logic, stability, entropy, but they don't understand us. They don't understand why we sent the ticket. They don't understand defiance, or hope, or love. She looked at Rostova, then at Vance. They don't understand that sometimes the glitch is the point. Rostova looked at the silent Reapers, at the terrified planet below, at the broken Concordance watching from afar. The Deathworlder fire in her eyes didn't flicker, it blazed. They saw chaos, she saw life. They saw a threat to order. She saw the messy, beautiful, terrifying struggle to exist. The ticket hadn't been a plea for mercy. It had been a declaration. We are here. We are operational. Deal with it. Then we show them, Rostova said, her voice ringing with sudden fierce clarity. Not with weapons. Not with logic they'll dismiss. We show them what the glitch does. The plan was insane. Suicidal. Utterly human. Using the Odyssey as a relay and leveraging every scrap of jury-rigged tech and human ingenuity, Bastion Command initiated Operation Bloom. They wouldn't fight the Reapers. They would flood them. Every broadcast tower on Earth, every satellite, every surviving comms array, every hacked Concordance relay, all were turned towards the Reaper fleet. Not with weapons fire, but with a torrent of raw, unfiltered humanity. Music poured into the void, Beethoven's ninth, punk rock anthems, lullabies sung in 100 languages. The chaotic beauty of a New Orleans jazz funeral. Images followed. Children laughing in rain, farmers tending fields, scientists arguing over equations, artists painting on city walls, couples holding hands at sunset, the raw, tear-streaked grief of a funeral, the defiant joy of a wedding. Data streams flowed. Poetry, philosophy, blueprints for impossible machines, recipes for bread, the complete works of Shakespeare translated into binary, the chaotic, vibrant pulse of human culture in all its messy, contradictory glory. It was a sensory and emotional tsunami aimed directly at the silent observers. A declaration not of threat, but of existence. Of life that refused to be silent, even in the face of oblivion. On the Odyssey, Vance piloted the ship on a slow, deliberate path towards the lead Reaper vessel, broadcasting the torrent at maximum power. "Come on, you silent bastards," he muttered, his hands steady on the controls. "Take a look. This is what you're trying to delete. This is the glitch." Inside Bastion, Rostova watched the feeds. She saw the Reaper symbols flicker, the geometric patterns stuttering as they tried to process the onslaught of chaotic, illogical, emotional data. The cold, efficient scanners seemed confused, overloaded. The symbols, Solal Prime, began to fragment, replaced by rapidly shifting, indecipherable glyphs. Verlac watched, his chitinous face unreadable, but his multifaceted eyes wide with something akin to awe. He saw the raw, unvarnished truth of the Catharn, not the dangerous anomaly of Concordance reports, but the terrifying, beautiful resilience of life itself. The music, the images, they resonated with something deep and long dormant within his own species. a memory of a time before rigid order, before the fear of chaos had frozen their souls. A single crystalline tear, rare for his kind, traced a path down his gray cheek. The lead Reaper vessel reacted, not with negation, with focus. A single narrow beam of pure cold light lanced out, not towards Earth but towards the Odyssey. Vance braced for dissolution. The beam struck the Odyssey's hull, but instead of unmaking it, the ship shuddered, consoles sparked, lights flickered. Vance felt a wave of information flood his mind. Not words, but concepts. Vast, ancient, terrifying concepts. The birth of stars, the slow death of galaxies, the crushing weight of entropy, the delicate, fragile balance that held the universe together, and within that balance, a growing instability. A chaotic resonance emanating from solar system, a resonance that threatened the balance. The Reapers weren't just gardeners. They were the universe's immune system. And humanity was the fever. The beam cut off. The Odyssey hung, crippled but intact, adrift in the shadow of the Reaper. Vance gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. The cosmic perspective leaving him reeling. He understood, truly understood. The Reapers weren't evil, they were necessary. And humanity was a threat, a beautiful, vibrant, terrifying threat. On the Reaper vessel, the symbols shifted again. Not Solo Prime, not deletion codes. A new sequence formed, complex and alien, but Carter, frantically cross-referencing with Thorne's Sulfari data, gasped, "Admiral, it's containment protocol. They're not deleting us. They're quarantining us." Rostova's heart sank. A gilded cage. A preserve. Humanity trapped on Earth forever, while the universe moved on. Safe, contained, sterile. The ultimate victory of order over chaos. The Deathworlder spirit extinguished not by violence but by suffocation. "No," Rostova whispered. Then louder, with the fire of 1,000 generations of survivors. "No." She turned to Carter. "Override the Bloom broadcast. Redirect all power. Not to the Reapers, to the source. To the ticket." Carter stared. "The ticket? Admiral, it's just a message. It's gone. It's a connection." Rostova yelled, her eyes blazing. "They acknowledged it. They're listening. We don't show them what we are. We show them what we do. What the glitch achieves." Understanding dawned on Carter's face. He slammed his hands on the console. Rerouting, channeling the entire Bloom feed through the original Omega ticket protocol, sending it back to the source. The torrent of human music, art, grief, joy, defiance, and love didn't just wash over the Reapers. It surged through the connection established by the tech support ticket, aimed not at the enforcers, but at the system itself, at the cosmic principle they serve. Silence. Absolute, profound silence fell over the command center, over Earth, over the Reaper fleet. The symbols on the lid vessel vanished. The obsidian surfaces became utterly perfectly black. No light, no reflection, no sign of life or function. They hung in orbit like dead stones. For 10 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Had it worked? Had they overloaded the system? Or had they simply triggered the final deletion? Then a single symbol appeared on the lead Reaper vessel. Not complex, not geometric. Simple, universal, a question mark. It pulsed once, softly in the cold light of the sun. Then the Reaper vessels began to move. Not towards Earth, not to deploy containment fields. They turned, silently, gracefully, and accelerated away from Soli's system, vanishing into subspace as quickly and silently as they had arrived, leaving only the stars, the silent moon, and a planet holding its breath. The aftermath was quiet, haunted. The Concordance fleet withdrew, Vrolak requesting a private audience with Rostova before he left. He didn't speak of protocols or equilibrium. He simply bowed his chitinous head, a gesture of profound respect utterly alien to his species, and said, "The garden is larger than we knew, Admiral Rostova, and weeds have their place." He left, carrying not data on a threat, but a seed of doubt, of wonder, back to the High Council. Earth began to rebuild. Not just physically, but spiritually. The near extinction had forged a unity, a fierce appreciation for the fragile, chaotic miracle of existence. They called it the Bloom Protocol, not as a weapon, but as a promise to keep creating, keep feeling, keep living, no matter the cost. Rostova stood on the surface of Luna again, looking at Earth. Vance joined her, leaning on a crutch, the Odyssey undergoing repairs in orbit. Thorne was analyzing the final data burst from the Reapers. Just the question mark and a single repeating frequency that matched the background hum of the universe itself. They didn't delete us, Vance said softly. They didn't quarantine us. They just left with a question. Because we answered the wrong question, Rostova replied, a small, tired smile touching her lips. They asked, is this anomaly a threat? We showed them. This anomaly is life. And maybe, just maybe, the system decided life, even messy, chaotic, dangerous life, was worth the risk. She looked up at the stars, no longer seeing just the void but a vast, ancient system that had for the first time in eons encountered something it couldn't categorize, something that filed a ticket, something that persisted. The universe had sent its Reapers. Humanity, the ultimate Deathworlders, had sent a tech support ticket, and in doing so hadn't just won a war. They'd forced the cosmos to hit reply. And the reply, echoing in the silent void, was a single, profound, universe-altering question. The war was over. The real work. The work of being gloriously, defiantly, messily alive in a universe that finally had to ask why, had just begun. And somewhere in the infinite dark, a cosmic help desk technician, older than stars, scratched their head, muttered, weird, and logged the ticket, Ace Ol Prime. Resolved. User error. The 9. Monitor. The universe, it seemed, had a soft spot for stubborn weeds.